I hope they are. Have you had a busy week?
It has been a busy week. Also, I found out you signed me up for the fund run, which I wasn't aware of. I think it's a good thing looking at my health and looking at my weight, shall I say. It's a good thing that I should be doing a fund run. Uh, well, gets me to the gym and exercising, which is a good thing.
I thought I would do you a massive favor,
Thank you for that,
and
Shaz.
looking at your feedback, I'm pleased I've done the right thing. The purpose of Empower Hour is to inspire, motivate, and empower you to achieve bigger and better things in your life. And as always, you are very good at interacting with us. So please do email us on studio@salamradio.co.uk, or you can text and WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook, which seems to be the most popular medium. And I'm absolutely delighted to have Steve Pipe on the show this evening. He is a very close friend, an award-winning accountant, an award-winning entrepreneur, the world's most highly recommended accountant per LinkedIn. We've written reports together, we've written a book together, and we've shared the stage on numerous occasions. And every single time it's been a huge privilege to share the stage with Steve. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening, Shaz. I must say it's my absolute privilege to spend the evening with you and your audience. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you very much for being with us. What's happening for you at the moment in business and in
Oh,
life?
oh, life is fabulous at the moment. I am a 50, well, you know this, but I'm a 56-year-old chartered accountant. I have three kids. They're all grown up. Our oldest is a junior doctor. And then we have twins. The girl twin Katie has just started at ASDA in their management training scheme, and the twin son Johnny is applying for accountancy. So to join you and I in the ranks of chartered accountants across the country. In fact, he had an interview today. So things are very exciting in the Pipe family household at the moment.
So they are all nearly as smart as you are then, Steve.
Actually, they're far cleverer than me, I'm delighted to say. Obviously, they've got their mum's genes, I think.
No comment. Tell me a bit about yourself and your business at the moment.
Yeah, well, I'm, as I said, 56. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm ferociously proud to be a chartered accountant. I studied economics at university. I joined a relatively large firm of accountants that then merged with KPMG, and I found myself in KPMG, pretty much the largest firm at the time. Left there, went into industry for a while, set up my own small accounting firm, and then really the bit, I guess, that's most interesting in how you and I met was about 15, 16 years ago. That's not when we met, but 15 or 16 years ago, I sold my accounting business and set up a business advising accountants, helping accountants to serve their clients better and in the process build more successful businesses for themselves. And in fact, the business started from not even a spare bedroom, but a shared bedroom at my home, shared with the little baby that is now our junior doctor daughter, but all those years ago. And so I went back to the management team and said, look, what I would really love to do is for you guys to buy most of my shares for this amount of money, and for me to move into a fundamentally different role, just to work 90 days a year for the business, to no longer be a director, so I don't get sucked back into the responsibility. And I didn't give it to them as an ultimatum. That's not my style. I just said, this is what I would absolutely love to happen. You know, what can we do? And they agreed pretty much straight away to every single one of those requests and suggestions. And so that's what happened. As you know, shortly after that, shortly before my 50th birthday, I effectively sold pretty much all of my share in the business, and now I no longer have any shares. The management team bought them from me for the amount of money that I wanted, my sort of punch air amount that would allow me to retire. But I didn't actually want to retire. I just wanted to move into a different role, just doing the things I love. And so for the last 5 or 6 years, I've been supporting that business in the areas that I love: researching, writing, standing up and talking about what I discover about how to make accountants and their clients more successful, and writing lots of books and as you were kind enough to mention, winning a couple of little awards along the way too. So yeah, in a nutshell, a whole rotation from large business, small business, small accounting firm I started, small business that I started that then grew into something quite significant, and now I've sold my share in. So and I'm living the life that makes me really, really happy.
Fantastic. And you are very popular today, Steve, because we've already had 6 questions come in. So
Wow.
I will tackle those one by one with
Yeah.
your support. In fact, I'll ask the questions and you can do the hard work by answering them. But we'll just
Okay.
we'll pretend it's a team effort.
Sounds good to me.
The first question is that according to a UK survey, 40% of accountants find major mistakes in their clients' accounts from previous accountants' errors or previous accounting errors made by previous accountants. So should the new accountant charge a premium for discovering all these unknown mistakes?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? But let's go back to the sort of the more fundamental issue that comes before that question, which is why is it that there are so many mistakes in accounting records and in the work that is done by some accountants? I think you'll know this, but for many, many years, I'm passionate about the accounting profession. I'm ferociously proud to be an accountant, but I'm also determined to do what I can to raise the service standards within the accounting profession so that every single client gets a world-class service from their accountant. And with new technology, sort of cloud technology that we're all hearing about and using and getting excited about, that's actually easier than ever before to do. And I'm pleased and proud to say that many, many members of the accounting profession are up in their game, are improving what they do, are serving their clients better, and in the process, of course, are building more successful businesses and deeper relationships with their clients than ever before. So there's real change, there's real progress happening within the profession. But go back to I guess the more obvious part of the question is what can we do about that, and what's the implications for the prices that accountants charge? Well, I have long believed, and all of the research I've seen, and indeed some of the research I've done, has led me to believe that the reason that in many cases accountants don't do a good enough job for their clients is, to put it bluntly, because most accountants are terrible at pricing. And they think they're doing their clients a favor by charging a low fee. But when you charge too low a fee, and the way that most accountants work, and I don't approve of this either, the way that most accountants work is that they calculate the fee based on how many hours they're going to do on the job. A low fee means they will only do a very small number of hours on a job. And the problem is that in a very small number of hours, you can't leave no stone unturned in getting everything right and in spotting all the tax planning opportunities and giving all the proactive advice and input that helps them grow their businesses and protect their personal wealth and improve their income and enhance their cash flow. You simply can't do that for a very low fee, because a very low fee equates to a very small number of hours of service and input. And in a sense, it's the accounting profession's own fault for not having the courage, the belief in itself enough to look a client in the eye and say, look, you cannot get a proper job done for pennies. You have to pay a proper price. But the joyful thing is that when you pay a proper price to accountant, a premium price in your language, then what you'll get in return is an extraordinary service that will make an extraordinary difference to your cash flow, your bank account, to your income, your wealth, your family's security, the options that you have to build a better life for yourself and go on holidays and give to the worthy causes, the charities, and whatever it is that's important to you. In other words, with a great accountant on your side, and you have to pay a proper price to get a great accountant, with a great accountant on your side, you build the life that you want, rather than just have to settle for whatever the roll of the dice gives to you. So I think accountants are at fault for not understanding that if they don't charge enough, they can't do a good enough job. They're at fault for not believing in themselves enough, in the value that they give. In some accountants' case, they're at fault for not actually doing a good enough job as well. But that's beginning to change. The business owners are beginning to understand that you get what you pay for, and they're beginning to understand when you pay for a great accountant, what you'll get is life-changing input.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. And if you've just joined us, welcome. You're listening to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM in Luton on 105.1 FM. This is the Empower Hour show with me, Shaz Nawaz, and Mohammed Hasib. I'm delighted to have Steve Pipe, who is a award-winning accountant, entrepreneur and author. We would love for you to get involved in the show. You can email us on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can text or WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, or you can send us a message through Facebook. An insightful question, Steve, from a regular viewer stroke listener, Fiaz, and his question is, cloud technology in accounting seems to be popular. How is it affecting the industry overall?
But it's changing the accounting profession for sure, but much more importantly than that, it's actually changing the lives of the businesses that use it. So just to go back to my answer to the previous question, just in case anybody's thinking I have an agenda here, I don't run an accounting firm. I am not trying to persuade anybody to use my accounting services. You cannot possibly use my accounting services. I don't do that. I'm talking from a position of principle rather than sort of a vested interest. But going back to cloud technology, when I forgot to mention, because it's not that important in my CV, but the very first job I did when I left school was I was employed by Rank Xerox. They had their computer headquarters in Bushey, just outside London, which is where I lived. And I was employed as a 18-year-old trainee COBOL programmer. Computers back in those days filled the entire, the computer power that is probably on my mobile phone here is greater than the entire basement of a 5-story building. The basement had an old-style computer, the kind of thing that you saw in James Bond movies from the 1960s. Computers in those days were extraordinarily cumbersome and extraordinarily slow, and processing power by today's standards was nothing. Now, you don't even need barely even need a physical computer. You can access enormous power, cloud technology, to manage your business, to manage your finances, to make better decisions, to drive things forward on your mobile phone. I'm sort of holding up my mobile phone just to kind of prove it. We all know that on our smartphones, there's extraordinary stuff. So we've gone from an age in my lifetime when computers were just extraordinary great monsters the size of multiple double-decker buses, to when most computer power now sits in the cloud. And the power of what sits in the cloud, what's available to us for pennies, quite frankly, is transformational. So, in the case of your core accounts production, every single business in the country, in the world, has to keep a record of what it spends, the cash that it collects, the sales that it's made, and the its profitability, and so on, the assets that it owns, and the liabilities that it owes to other people. And that often, historically was done on spreadsheets, or it was done in manual cash books, bits of paper everywhere, enormous amount of work, writing them up, adding them up, making mistakes, going back and doing it again, never really getting any great insights from that, being bogged down hours and hours and hours of data processing. And what we have now is the ability with your mobile phone, for example, to take a purchase invoice, you buy something, whether it's a rail ticket from Virgin Rail, or whether it's your Starbucks coffee on the way to work, or whether it's an invoice for a new car, and just simply take a photograph of it with your phone, and that will automatically be put into your accounting system in the right place. And your accounting system will automatically look at your bank account with all sorts of protection built in, bring out every penny that you earn in your bank account, every penny that you spend through your bank account, automatically in your accounts without you lifting a finger, and so on and so forth. And the ability, therefore, to have at our fingertips, on our mobile phones, on our desktop screens, up-to-date, real-time live information showing us exactly how much we've earned, exactly how much we've spent, exactly what our profits are, exactly what our VAT bill will be in a month's time or a quarter's time, whenever we pay it, and allowing us to see exactly the profitability of our products and services, and make better decisions than ever before, driven by data that doesn't involve us having a whole team of people in an office somewhere typing stuff into a computer, because it's done in a largely automated way. That's transformational. In many, many small businesses, the business owner gets back at the end of a long working day exhausted, and then has the prospect of an hour's worth of typing up paperwork into his account system at the end of the day. And now none of that needs to happen. So it's transformational. And then even better than that, that kind of cloud technology can link up with your point of sale system if you're in the shop, or your stock system, or your production system, your ordering system, even your people system, your payroll and your HR systems. All of those things can be linked together seamlessly to create huge swathes of businesses that are largely automated. And you don't even need expensive computer power. Most of these tools are available for a few pounds a month on a subscription basis. And if they work, you keep paying. And if they don't, you find another one, but you're not locked into a long contract and you just transfer over. It's a fundamentally different world from back in the day when I started out.
That's a very extensive and thorough answer, and I'm sure Fayaz and our other listeners would have found value from that particular answer.
My advice to Fayaz, actually, and everybody else who's running a small business, if you are not using cloud accounting, there has to be an extraordinary good reason why you don't use it, because for the vast majority of businesses, the benefits are enormous and the costs are tiny. Why wouldn't anybody do that?
Absolutely. I will now pass you over to Hasib. I think Hasib and you may have met when you spoke at a seminar previously in Peterborough. Hasib, over to you, sir.
Hasib, great to meet you this evening again.
Likewise, Steve. And thank you for joining us today for the interview on there, and thank you for your time, your busy schedule. Steve, as you were mentioning before, regarding accountants and any other businesses that business people have, I think work-life balance is crucial to enjoy your work. How important do you think work-life balance is, and what sort of tips can you give regarding on work-life balances?
Yeah, there is ultimately nothing more important than the things you love and the things you care about. Business is just a means to an end, isn't it?
Yeah.
And for too many business owners, what happens is their business swallows up their life. It swallows up every waking minute. It prevents them looking after their health because they're working too hard and stressed. It prevents them being there for their family and doing all the other important things, spiritual or whatever else it is that matters to them, because the business is all consuming. That just can't be right. That's true. That's genuinely sad, and I think in many instances genuinely tragic. I think probably the most important lesson I've learned I'm now 57, so I've been almost 40 years in business, only well over 30 years in business. The single most important lesson I've learned is to put your family first. And that sounds like a cliche, and I'm categorically not talking about it as lip service, saying you put your family first and then doing something else. It's about putting the family first, putting that phrase at the heart of every decision you make, using that as a compass to help you decide which, because many times in business there are options, we can go this way or we can go that way. Using that family, that moral compass, as it were, to guide us in our decision. Let me give you an example. When in my earlier career, I worked for KPMG, as I said, and then I left them and I joined Kodak, and I was the head of finance for 140 million division of Kodak. By the way, the fact that Kodak's gone bust is not my fault. I left many years before that happened. But back in those days, both of those organisations were paying very significant salaries. But our daughter Laura, who's now 27, was born, and within a week of, pretty much straight away, I realised that I didn't want to work stupid hours for Kodak or indeed for anybody else. I wanted to be there for my family. And so within 2 weeks of Laura being born, I'd handed in my notice at Kodak. Turned out, because I'd been there less than 6 months, I was out of there within a week. I didn't expect that. I thought it'd be a month or more, but happily I was unemployed a week later. Imagine having your first child, and within 3 weeks of your first child being born, you are voluntarily unemployed. You've given up a really good job and you have absolutely no idea what you're going to do next. But I did that because for me, my family was the most important thing. And I think that's the most important lesson I've learned. Now, as it happened, that particular decision led me down the pathway which brought me to where I am today and loving my life and doing things which I'm really excited by. So putting your family first and actually making that the compass that everything else is driven by is to me the first learning point. The second learning point is to understand that in business, you cannot and you must not try to do everything yourself. That is impossible. That's a recipe for burning yourself out. It's a recipe for limiting the ability of the business to grow, because there's only one of you and there are only so many hours in a day. And once you've used them all up, that's it. So you have to build a business with a view to it being scalable and leverageable, so that even if you don't want to grow it, you can at least pass some of your work, potentially quite a lot of what needs to be done in the business, to somebody else. And so I think the key to that kind of scalable and leverageable business is building a business that isn't dependent on what's in your head, but actually taking what's in your head, the things that you know how to do. You know, in your business, you know how to make stuff, you know how to sell it, you know how to, to buy the components at the right kind of price. And so you know an enormous amount if you run a business, but for as long as it's in your head, you're in trouble, because it requires you to be there doing it in Michael Gerber's language. And Michael Gerber came up with the answer. He said, build a business that's based on systems. Take what's in your head and write it down. Create step-by-step processes for doing everything in the business, or at least everything that matters. And then work on, and Gerber says, doesn't he, work on your business rather than in it. In other words, rather than just doing it, being the person that does everything, you create systems so that someone else can do it as well as you would do it. You embody your knowledge in a step-by-step guide. And in fact, I've spent a good part of my day, the last 2 days, in fact, creating a system which I hope that hundreds of accountants around the world will use to help their clients get better results and to help make a difference to the lives of people in need. But I'm doing that and there's 5 pages of step-by-step, numbered in one order after the other, exactly what to do, exactly how to do it, exactly what to say. When you take that kind of attention to detail, a little person, me here in Leeds, or you in your business, anybody in their business can then work out how to do it well. They can pass that to someone else. And then, because they know exactly how it's being done, because someone's following the system, they can also measure how well it works. And they can identify new ideas. They can test a new idea. They've got a measurement score for how well it worked yesterday. And then they change something and they measure how well it works today. And if today is better than yesterday, that's telling them there's an improvement that they should build into the system. If today isn't better than yesterday, they probably chuck that idea out and look for a new one. So if you have a systems-based business, if you have a systems-based mentality, if you get in the habit of breaking down everything you do into step-by-step chunks and writing them down and then passing them to someone else, you have the ability to grow your business. You have the ability to step back from your business. And ultimately, you have the ability to sell the business for the sort of money that you would hope to get from it when you exit. Because I'm told, and I've never verified this fact, but I'm told that McDonald's has created more millionaires than any other business in the history of business. And that's not because, with the greatest respect, that McDonald's food is the best in the world, although I have to put my hand up. I eat a lot of McDonald's burgers, so I do love it. But it's not because their food is great. It's because they created a great system. And they sell that system to their franchisees around the world over and over and over again. And those franchisees pay a lot of money for those franchises because they know that that system is a money-making machine.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. We're going to head towards a break now. And then after the break, you can finish off your point on McDonald's. And viewers and listeners, please do join us after the break. We'll be back with you in a few moments. Thank you very much.
You're listening to Salaam Radio, and it's now time for Maghrib Azan.
This Azan is sponsored by Acorn Academy Day Nursery, where baby acorns grow into mighty oaks. To register your child or arrange a visit, please call Catherine on 01733 890 911.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim. This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim Community Radio, broadcasting on 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and Inspire FM on 105.1 FM. You're listening to Empower Hour with me, Shaz Nawaz, and my co-host Mohammed Hasib. I'm delighted that we have Steve Pipe, who is an award-winning accountant, entrepreneur, and a world-recognized authority and advisor to accountants. As always, we would love for you to get involved, so please do email us on studio@salamradio.co.uk. You can also text and WhatsApp us on 077 45 278 978, or you can send us messages through Facebook, and we have quite a few messages and questions, in fact, Steve. So welcome back, Steve. Are you there?
Thanks for having me back.
Perfect.
I was worried if I wasn't doing a good job, you'd have cut me off. So that hasn't happened.
I wouldn't.
It's okay.
I wouldn't dare, but you are doing a fantastic job, and I can see by the questions we are getting from our listeners that your interview is extremely popular, and we have quite a few questions. So hopefully we can try and cover them all. The next question we have, and you'll like this question, is that good professional accountants should move to value-based accounting and move away from traditional time-based selling. What's your opinion on that?
I In a nutshell, I agree completely, and let me explain why. First, well, I already said, didn't I, that I'm on a crusade to help accountants do a better job to serve their clients better. And when they serve their clients better, when they make more of a difference to their clients, it's right and proper that if they create a lot of value for their clients, that the fee that they charge reflects that value. You know, if you help someone generate hundreds of thousands of pounds, then a good fee is fair and proper for that. Whereas if you make tiddly squat difference, then it's very difficult to justify almost any fee, isn't it? What I find extraordinary, and we have already talked about pricing a little bit before, but let me go back and pick up on that point. I find it completely extraordinary that the pricing model that accountants have used for, let's face it, hundreds of years, and that sadly too many accountants still use today, is this. It's essential because they charge by the hour. The pricing model is essentially the longer we take, the slower we go, the more we're going to charge you. The less efficient we are, the more we're going to charge you. That time, that's if I was catching a train from Leeds to Peterborough, as I have done before when I come and visited you, if when I got off at Peterborough station, the ticket inspector said to me, "Sir, you realise that your train was delayed today, and therefore you've been sitting in that seat for 2 hours more than you expected. And because we time-based bill, we have to double the price and charge you an exit price you come through the barrier for being late." I would think that was absolutely outrageous, and yet that's really not very different to the way that most accountants or accountants have historically charged. That's clearly not right. It's clearly not fair. It doesn't encourage innovation. It doesn't encourage efficiency. So it's great to see that forward-thinking accountants are moving to a double-edged approach. And that double-edged approach is, number one, we are going to be much more valuable to our clients. And number two, we're going to calculate the prices linked to the value that we create, because that's fair and right and proper and reasonable. And I think that then encourages innovation. That encourages great service. That encourages accountants to do more in less time, because it's all about the result. And quite frankly, there was never I've never met a business owner who ever woke up any morning of their entire life and thought, I want 2 hours of an accountant's time today. No one ever thinks in terms of buying an accountant's time. They think in terms of, how can the accountant help me reduce my tax bills, or get my affairs in order, or improve my profits, or make my business more saleable, or negotiate a better deal, or whatever. It's the outcome, it's the result that matters. And the sooner that accountants focus on helping their clients get better results, rather than focusing on going slow in order to charge more hours, the better for everybody.
That's a good answer. Following on from that, we have a question regarding how accountants generally behave in business. So the question is that your fellow accountants, well, there's a survey done, and your and my fellow accountants, 80% of them were seen as laggers, and only 20% of them were stars. And our questioner would like to know why that is.
Old habits die hard, complacency, sticking with a model that used to work but doesn't work anymore, all sorts of possible reasons. I mean, my job here isn't to criticize or undermine the accounting profession. I want to build the profession up. I want to make every single accountant and the relationship they have with every single client in the country better than it's ever been. And as we said before, technology and the right mindset and the right training and so on, and the right pricing model will really lead to that. So yeah, as in all walks of life, there are some people who do a better job already, and there are some that are learning, and there are sadly a few who just can't be bothered. And at the risk of embarrassing you, Shaz, I have known you for many years, and it's no accident that you feature in my book, The World's Most Inspiring Accountants, because you are doing all of the things that I've been talking about today. And you are, shining a light for other accountants to follow, including, being a host on this radio show. I actually don't know any other accountants, and I know thousands of accountants. I don't know any other accountants who host a radio show with the specific intention of inspiring people to do a better job in their businesses and in their work and through their communities and for their economies and so on. That's an awesome thing. So if only more accountants were like you, would be part of my answer to that. I know you weren't wanting me to say that, but I'm sorry, I've said it anyway, because it happens to be true. And also, and I got an extraordinary illustration of that over the weekend. I mean, you'll know this, but your readers won't yet, I guess. I hope you don't mind me mentioning it. But Shaz has just written another book, and it's about the Authority Guide to Pricing, or pretty much the words of the title. It's Pricing for Business Owners. And he very kindly asked me to review the book pre-publication over the weekend, which I did. And Shaz, you know that I think it's a fantastic contribution. It'll be hugely valuable to business owners. But you writing that book, you helping your clients focus on pricing, is again showing what a great accountant can do. And you're inspiring them, and I hope by telling your story, I also will inspire other accountants through you to serve their clients better. Because when we do that, and I mean, you'll know that in the introduction to my book, The World's Most Inspiring Accountants, and you're the first firm featured in there, you'll know that in the introduction, a few pages before the chapter on you, I say in there that, in my opinion, and based on this research, it's a 2-year research project, by the way, with accountants around the world, that in my opinion, there is no group that can better contribute towards the well-being of society, other than medics, than accountants. Accountants can make an extraordinary difference, because if you think what accountants are involved with, every single business pretty much in the world, certainly in the UK, works with an accountant. If they've got the right kind of accountant who's giving them their finger on the pulse of all the numbers that matter, those businesses are going to make better decisions. And one decision at a time, they're going to get better results. And £1 of profit, for example, £1 of cash flow at a time, they're going to be able to create more jobs. And one job at a time, that's going to help a family. And one family at a time, that's going to build a better future for us all and strengthen our communities and help solve our social problems. And, and as we do that, we'll then also be able to be more generous as societies and as a country to other people in other parts of the world who aren't as fortunate as us. All of that can flow through from an accountant doing a great job. And that's why I'm passionate about helping the accountancy profession do that.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. Not only am I humbled by your comments, but you've also landed yourself a permanent job. Every time I go onto stage now, you will be formally introducing me, whether you like it or not.
That would be my pleasure. We could actually do that by video, couldn't we? I could do a 30-second video doing that. You'd only use it once and never again. Say, no, he's not very good at that.
I wouldn't dare. But thank you for that. The next question we have is that, is it true to say that an average-sized accountancy practice makes about £70,000 profit per year if they are using time-based billing, whereas the firms who are using value-based billing, they seem to make around 150 to 200,000 pounds per year? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the last time I looked, those stats that you quoted were pretty close to, as I remember, the benchmark data. But let's not get hung up on the individual numbers. I think the general principle here in life and in science and everywhere else is the law of cause and effect. The results that you get, the effect, are caused by something. When you do, and this is for me the guiding principle in business, when you do the right thing for the right people in the right way, you get rewarded. And the more of the right things you do for the right people in the right way, the greater those rewards are. Now, sometimes those rewards are financial, sometimes those are emotional, sense of achievement and satisfaction and purpose and joy and love and so on. But it's all about doing the right things. And so I suspect that what's happening in those numbers that you quoted is that those accountants that are value pricing are focusing on being more valuable to their clients. In other words, doing more of the right things. They're probably more selective over the clients they work with, the clients that actually want to improve their businesses, create jobs, create wealth, create prosperity, make a difference to their communities. So they're doing the right things with the right clients. And if they do that in the right way, using technology and so on, all of that hangs together. And what happens is, because the accountant is making a great difference to their business clients, and because that value that they're creating for their business clients is reflected in the fees that they earn, then that builds for the accountant a very successful and profitable practice. And that's the law of cause and effect, isn't it? What you put in, you get out. If you put in great stuff, you get out appropriate rewards. And for those accountants or anybody in business who isn't isn't earning as much as they would like, for example, their business isn't as successful as they would like it to be, it's probably a function of a couple of things. It's a function of not doing the right things or not doing them well enough. You know, you can be doing the right things but haven't yet worked out how to master it in a way that's commercially successful, or you can quite frankly just be, so in my example, you could be doing the right things, you can be trying to be valuable to clients, but if you haven't actually worked out how to deliver and package that and communicate that value and help your clients see it so they take action on it, and unless that all of that happens, you know, it's like the client doesn't notice and therefore doesn't pay you properly for that. So you're doing the right thing, but you've not quite worked out how to fully do it as efficiently and effectively as possible. Whereas when you get both in place, you do great stuff and you do it in the right way, that you do it efficiently and effectively, then everything clicks together. And, you know, that law of cause and effect, or natural justice almost kicks in, and, you know, that we get rewarded, we get rewarded for what we do, for the value that we bring, for the difference that we make, for the contribution that we're responsible for. And I think that's the key to it. And if firms are on one side of the equation, it's because they're not doing enough of that.
Talking about value, you've been very proactive in the accountancy sector and in the business sector in terms of writing books. Why and how have you managed to write so many books, Steve?
Thank you for asking me that question, because it's actually one of my favourite areas, as you know. I actually wrote my first book, which was published by Kogan Page, and I'm holding it up if anybody's watching this on Facebook, back in, it was actually, I think, before Laura was born. First published in 1993, so that's 24 years ago. And then I've gone on to write a handful of the other books, and there are two more in the pipeline for 2018, The World's Best Accounting Practices, which is specific for accountants, and another book which I contributed to, having played a large part in the first edition. I'm contributing to the second edition as well, called Better Business, Better Life, Better World, in conjunction with Paul Dunn and the B1G1 movement that we're both passionately part of. So I've written quite a lot of books, and I've got about four or five other book projects sort of on the back burner, which I may turn my attention to at some point over the next few years. So why and how? I think there are probably three reasons why I've written so many books. Firstly and foremostly, I love it. I love the process of thinking and then capturing my thoughts in written form. So it gives me a huge amount of joy. And I can tell you the very first time this book was dedicated to, my first book was dedicated to my wife and the children, to Carol, Laura, Jonathan and Katie. It says on the inside front page. The second book was dedicated to my mum and dad, and one of the subsequent books was dedicated to my grandma, my oldest living relation, my only relation of that generation at the time. And the joy that it also gave to them, that, you know, there was a book written by their husband, dad, or son, or grandson, and that it was dedicated to them. So there's a huge amount of love and joy. That's the first reason. Second reason is legacy. Coincidentally, these all begin with L, so love, legacy, and lead. So let's stick with the legacy one. You can say stuff, and with the best will in the world, this radio show next week may be fantastic. Might be okay today. It's probably going to be fantastic next week. But, you know, once it's gone, once it's happened, it's largely gone. Although there'll be a Facebook Live recording, and I guess that will sit out in the digital universe for years to come. So much of what we do happens and then it's gone. Whereas when you write a book, it creates a legacy. That book can, in principle, be read by someone in hundreds of years' time. And so that you know, leaving a legacy, passing ideas on that will hopefully add in some small way to other people's knowledge, maybe to other people's lives and their businesses, that inspires me also. And at a really practical level, the third reason, the first one was love, the second reason was legacy, the third reason was leads, sales leads. You know, effectively, when you have a book, it is a brilliant way of generating leads for your business. So my books collectively have created all manner of leads and opened all manner of doors for me. They got me speaking on speaking platforms around the world. They've generated sales for me. They opened doors at the highest level in professional bodies around the world, and so on and so forth. The credibility that comes from having written a book, the fact that people take you so much more seriously having written a book, is just incredibly powerful. And you can't buy that. I don't think you can get that almost any other way. The ability to introduce yourself to someone and say, would you like a copy of my book? I used to. This book is these colors because this was a book I wrote when I did run an accounting practice 20 or more years ago. And the colors, the logo color scheme of the practice was blue and orange, exactly as in the cover of this book. And so I used this effectively as my business card, even though it was published by Cope and Page, proper publishers, available on bookshops and airport lounges, all over the world. And it created fantastic opportunities. So that's the why. How did I write? How do I continue to write lots of books and do all the other things that I do while still putting my family first? And the answer to that is it's so much easier to write a book than almost anybody would believe. And so my first few books were published by independent publishers, and I had contracts and they paid me royalties and so on and so forth, and they distributed them in conventional forms, but that's all changed now. I wouldn't dream of going to a conventional publisher for my book now. And getting a publisher to say yes back in the old days was really, really tough. So to get it twice was very good fortune for my part. But today, with Amazon, you can publish your own book. You can get an ISBN, you've got the sales platform, you can online, you can find proofreaders, you can find editors, you can find cover designers. All you've really got to do is write the bits between the front page and the back page. And even that is so much easier than most people imagine. All of my books, every single one of my books follows the same structure, which is I'm not capable, I'm not clever enough to write a book where you have to have understood everything you're going to say and planned everything you're going to say from beginning to end over 200 pages. I write my books in 2 to 4 page bite-sized chunks, each of which stands alone. So in the book that you feature in, for example, there are 60 case studies of firms like yours, not quite as good as yours, Shaz, but like yours, 60 case studies, all about 2 or 3 pages long. I can do one interview with one firm of accountants. I can write that chapter. It takes me a couple of hours, and that chapter's done. It stands alone. It's finished, and then I move on to the next one. Doesn't matter which order I write them in. I then put them together at the end. So my first book was called 101 Ways to Make More Profits, because there's 101 small chapters of about 2 pages each. That's a 200-page book. This one, Stress Proof Your Business and Your Life, has got, from memory, it's got 44 small chapters, each one of which is standalone. And so, firstly, if you break it down to small chunks, if you publish it yourself, it becomes remarkably easy. Even the small chunks, you can record. And we could turn this into you if we wanted to, into a book. It wouldn't be a very long book, and I haven't said anything really worth putting in a book, but we could, because you've got a recording of it on Facebook Live. You can send that off for a few dollars or pounds to get it transcribed by somebody and takes the spoken word and turns it into the written word. And then with a little bit of editing, that written word would be, there could be a small chapter around each of the questions you've asked me. And, by the end of the week, we could have a small book together, couldn't we, on the stuff you've asked me. Because there's no definition of what a book consists of. There's no law that says a book has to be at least 200 pages and the font has to be a certain size. So it's so much easier to create a book using technology than it ever was before. It's even easier to sell it than it ever was before, because in the old days, all sales were through bookshops, and if you didn't have connections there, you couldn't get a distribution. Whereas now, Amazon is the biggest distribution channel in the world, and you can access it tomorrow. With as many books as you've written by tomorrow. And so it's so much easier. My other one bit of advice, if anybody does want to write a book, and I would say writing a book because it's a joyful thing to do, it creates a fantastic legacy and it's great for sales leads. My one other piece of advice is, whilst I would and I do put my books on Amazon, but I don't want to sell many of my books through Amazon at all. Because Amazon will, for example, they pay you 40% of the list price. So this book is on Amazon for £45. Amazon pay me 40% of that, which is 18 quid or so. But I've got to have it printed. I've got to send it to them. It's hardback. Most of the 18 quid is taken up by those costs. It's not profitable. Worse than that, you have no idea who buys your book on Amazon. So they're not a sales lead. The book just goes out to some anonymous customer. Whereas what I'd much rather do is sell my books through my website, because that way then I can sell it for £45. One, more money, and secondly, much more importantly, I know who's bought it. And anybody who puts their hand up and says, I'm interested in your book, is obviously interested in what I do and potentially therefore a customer. So selling books through your own website is a great sales lead generator. And it doesn't, I mean, I'm an accountant and my books are about business success, but your book could be about, well, whatever it is that your business does, whatever value that your business creates for people, your book could be about that. If you're a plumber, it could be, the 17 key ways to keep your plumbing in tip-top condition and never have to worry about the pipes bursting in the winter or something. I just made that title up. And you could have 17 short little chapters about those things. Whatever business you're in, there is a book to be written.
I wish I could make up titles as quickly as you can, Steve. It usually takes me like a week, and even then I have to rely on my wife and my kids or my children to come up with a few buzzwords. I'll now pass you over to Hasib, because I know he has 2 or 3 questions to take us to the end of the show.
Steve, what's the most important thing that you have learned?
Well, I think the most important thing I've learned in life is put your family first, as I said before. I think probably the most important thing I've learned in business is probably, well, yeah, it is this actually. It's don't, and there are so many important things that we all need to learn, but I think if I was to put one at the top of the list, it would be understand the power of small. And let me explain what I mean by that. It's very easy to think, oh, well, making my business more successful, that's an enormous task. It's so big and it's so off-putting that there's nothing I can do, so I won't even try. Because if our goals and aspirations, what we'd like to create or achieve or earn and so on, are a long way away from where we are now, that feels like it's unbridgeable as a gap. Whereas actually the power of small tells us that if we just take little tiny steps in the right direction, those small steps, those tiny steps, then cumulatively, progressively, that can add up to a phenomenal result. And let's face it, British cycling went from Olympic obscurity to topping the Olympic medal table 3 Olympic Games in a row. And the team put it down to the concept which they labeled as marginal gains. In other words, making lots and lots of tiny changes. As tiny as when they carry the bikes around from venue to venue, they painted the inside of the vehicle, the lorries carrying their cycling, their bikes, white. Because when the inside was white, they could see the grit and the dust and they could clean it out. And that grit and dust didn't then get in the chains, didn't slow up the mechanism by a nanosecond. Whereas when everybody else has grey vans, you can't see the dust, you can't clean it out, and you get those nanoseconds of slowness in the chain. They did many, many, many of those little tiny marginal changes, and the net impact, the cumulative impact of all those things was, when you add them up, was we went from Olympic obscurity to topping the medal table at the most competitive and toughest arena, the Olympic Games in the world. Not once, not twice, 3 Olympic Games in a row. It's the greatest turnaround in the history of sport, and it was down to understanding the power of small. And it's exactly the same in business. Both Shaz and see, we were at a seminar in Peterborough together where we looked at a case study of how a little business gets an extra £2 million, not overnight, and not all by doing any one big dramatic thing with their account.
Thank you very much for that, Steve, because we're nearing the end. So I think what we'll do is we'll have to set up the same seminar again, and all our listeners can join us and hear you speak live. Thank you very much to Steve, to you for joining us, and for the listeners for joining us. We'll see you next week.